Hello everybody.
Good morning. Today we want to talk about our image of God. It has such a big impact in our lives. We don't always realize how big that impact is, but it actually colors everything that we do, how we approach life, how we judge ourselves, how we enter into relationships. It's really, it touches on everything. And when we talk of our image of God, it implies that each one of us has a particular image of God. We can be in the same faith denomination or having the same background, but even in that background, in that faith tradition, there's variety. There might be broad consensus around certain issues, but on a personal level, each one of us has a particular image of God that colors and influences our lives. And by saying that, we are also saying that there is something dynamic about this image of God. Growing up, I had an image of God set in stone. Those are the attributes of God. That's how God looks. So very static, very firm in terms of that. And it is gradually through life, through experiences, God revealing himself to me in different ways, that I've discovered this dynamic aspect of this image of God, of my relationship with God. But it stems from a deep personal experience around that image.
I think for me personally, my image of God was very strongly formed by my father, who was very conservative, Protestant, and we were raised with very strict rules and according to my father's beliefs in what is right and wrong. And I think to a large degree, I was as afraid of God as I was of my dad. Especially when I was younger, but having this image of God as somebody that sits from afar and watches for every move that I might be doing wrong and that will punish me, to such an extent that I think that in a lot of my decisions, life decisions that I made, I was actually punishing myself by having maybe done something that I thought was wrong and then giving myself a sentence.
Almost following God's example.
Yeah, following God's example and believing that this is what
or
God
your
wants
perception
of
God's example.
Yeah, so this is what God expects of me. This would be the right thing to do. So it really colored my decision making to a large extent, and I think for most of my life, until my 40s, when I started, I almost call it my waking up period, where I started looking at life and at God and saying, but I really so want to be in a closer relationship with God, even though I'm so scared of God and I don't know how. And God just taking me, also like you, on a journey of discovering my senses, discovering God in nature, just getting such a more abstract idea of who God is and how God reveals himself to us.
And listening to you, it's also a movement from a God, as you said, that is distant, moving into certain situations and making certain announcements or whatever. A movement from that to a much more intimate interwoven relationship.
A present, a constant presence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as my image of God changed, it caused massive shifts in my life, in my decision making, in how I view life in general, how I view the world, and how I view our care of the planet.
Would you say you're more adventurous?
I must say I'm still scared of God, because I've discovered that God can throw curveballs.
But scared, in a different.
Yes,
you have to qualify now.
In the sense that life becomes an adventure. It's not so much looking out and doing the right thing, but that God takes you on a journey that can be very adventurous and that asks something of you, but it's a different kind of scared.
Yes, it's almost like the ego protesting and say, I'm scared to step over the edge, and God says, come, explore this, and we hold back, because I think also in my own discovery, something, and now I don't want to come over the wrong way, but there's something wild in God. God is not domesticated. I grew up with a very domesticated image of God, fitting in neat boxes. But the big discovery that I made is God is a wild God, in the most beautiful sense of the word. Wild as a storm, wild as wind blowing through leaves, wild as a creative force. So not predictable in terms of my schemes, and involved in every aspect of my life. Wherever my loves are, there I find God. And even in my fears, there God is. Whether I'm busy with a sculpture, whether I'm dreading a phone call that I have to make, in everything I believe something of God. It's this flowing, this the image that I have is almost of electricity. In these movies, when there's a high voltage, you see this, and God is like that for me. It sparks. It's very, very alive. So a very dynamic image of God, and as you say, a God full of surprises. But not in a bad way, but God tapping into who we are and say, have you explored this? And you pull back and you say, no, I'm not going there. And God saying, no, let's go there. And in the process, expanding our view of ourselves as well.
But I think that in terms of making it very concrete, for me to not to imagine, to experience God as something as concrete as our breath.
Yes.
As the oxygen that we take in, which is given, which is love being bestowed on us, and that specific breath that you are taking, uniquely you are taking, and God expressing himself through everything that my eyes light on. Whether I'm looking at a flower, or there is something being expressed of God, of who God is, of the love of God. It's an expression of love.
Coming back to that favorite text of ours in Acts 17, through him we live and breathe and have our being.
Yes, God in everything, like the Jesuits would say. That makes sense for me. God in absolutely everything. Life is infused with God.
Yeah.
We cannot not be with God, or not be in God, because God is in everything.
So the big adventure is to discover your God.
And your dialect, the dialect that God
Yes.
speaks with you,
Mm.
which is very custom made.
Yes. It's very, very personal and intimate. It's love language. Yeah. Will you please guide us in the meditation today?
I will. We don't have any footage that we're going to show you, just the two of us. So you're welcome to close your eyes and just relax into your seat. Let's focus on our breathing for a bit. Just take a nice big breath in, realizing that it's also given by God. And just relax into your body and feel your feet on the ground. Feel how you are one with the earth that is created by God, like you are created by God, and through which God expresses himself. Let's for a moment think of a place or a situation where we feel very close to God, where we feel in the presence of God. See if something comes up in your mind. If you feel that you don't really know what that means, go to a situation or a place where you feel really at peace, where you feel comfortable and safe, and where you have a feeling of being at rest. And just feel where in your body you feel that, and what emotion would you name if you had to give it an emotion. And let's just stay there for a couple of minutes. Let's just hand ourselves over to God and allow ourselves to just relax into God's arms. Just drift in God. Slowly start coming back to the room. Take another deep breath in. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
Keep
Keep
well,
well.
everybody.